So today we have Rob Herrington with PrairieFood. He is a CEO of PrairieFood. Soil Regen works closely with PrairieFood. They're gracious sponsors for a lot of our events. They're very interested in education about soil health, and it's an honor to be here with you today, Rob.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Liz. Looking forward to a lively, fun conversation.
As always. It might not be as lively as our Sunday conversations, but it'll be good.
That was pretty lively.
Yeah. So I want to start out by you giving us an introduction about yourself. And first off, I would like to know, where you grew up and how you landed in this soil health regenerative ag space.
Oh, that's a great story. Well, yeah, I was born and raised in Western Kansas, Colby, Kansas in particular. I was a city boy. I'm an only child. My father was a typewriter repairman, and that was probably the worst paying job in the United States at the time. We didn't have a car or anything, so it was an interesting growth phase. But the fun part of it, of growing up there, was all my friends in ag, because I always wanted to be a farmer. So I worked on farms, stacking shocks by hand for 10 cents a shack. So it was interesting times, driving combines and grain trucks and cutting hogs and cattle and just everything there was to do with ag. The cool part was my dad ended up buying that business and became the owner. So I learned a lot about business. And the fun part of that was we provided business solutions to other businesses. So we had to understand how all those businesses worked in order to sell these new innovative things that were coming on the market, like electronic calculators and video machines and all sorts of other things. So it was a good background and training for where my expertise kind of lies, at least I've been told, is in economic models and visioning the future markets, and then putting together the pieces necessary to take an existing business and make it more profitable. And that's kind of the grow up side of it. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my 8th startup business, PrairieFood. It is a 12-year overnight success. So everybody, they don't happen overnight, regardless of what people will tell you in the media. It takes a lot of hard work, and you end up doing just like farmers. You have twists and turns and ups and downs along the way, and hopefully over the long term you do a good job. PrairieFood in particular is kind of me getting back to my love, which is the earth and where we are. And most of my other 7 businesses were in high-tech area, nonlinear differential equations and removing noise from sound and building cell phone interfaces and all sorts of interesting things along those lines. I was pretty successful in one venture. We took it from 0 to 300 million in 36 months, and eventually did an IPO on the NASDAQ at 2 billion market cap, back when 2 billion was 2 billion. And then I've also had some spectacular failures where we went the other direction as well. But that's all about the journey and the process of an entrepreneur. PrairieFood really came to my attention back in 2011. And one of my, or actually earlier than that, 2008 was when I really got wind of it. One of my CTOs from my other companies was mentoring a group of folks in California that had entered a project into the clean tech competition sponsored by Kleiner Perkins, which is one of the big venture capital companies out there. And they ended up taking 2nd place in the market in the contest, but their economic model didn't work. And they reached out to me to help them with their economic model. And I got so intrigued with what they were doing that I began pursuing it and started looking into it. And what they wanted to do was to, through a process called pyrolysis, which is a high temperature, it's how you make biochar. A high temperature process, what they wanted to do was miniaturize a $200 million plant down to the size of a cargo container, drive it around Texas, pick up the dead trees from the drought, grind them up, put them into the plant, turn it into syngas, and put the syngas back in the pipeline. And that was the model. And as I looked at the model and looked at the costs, it was like, that'll never work. It's too expensive to do that. And if you drug a 1,200 degree plant around Texas, you're liable to burn down most of the state, let alone be able to move a bunch of syngas back into the pipeline. So I got involved in it and began thinking about my experience growing up in Colby, Kansas, of my friends in ag, and where is there a lot of biomass made, and it's not moving around, and you have to drive around and pick it up. What if you could have a plant and you could use biomass, for example, from a feedlot, because it's running 24/7, 365, and they don't stop pooping. So if you could take that biomass and turn it into an energy product, which is what we were looking at that time, that may be a very profitable business. We never could get the economics to work because of the process of pyrolysis, and the cheapest, we were making a terrestrial coal to burn in a power plant to displace coal essentially. But we figured out that they wouldn't pay $100 a ton for coal that when they could buy it for $20 a ton from somewhere else. So that model didn't work. But eventually we pivoted and got away from energy because of my childhood friend David Brin was in my class from second grade on in Colby, America. Was an extension agent for Kansas extension offices, and he told farmers how much NPK and sulfur and zinc to put on the ground to grow corn. And when Dave asked what I was doing, and I told him, he said, "Well, what's in it?" And I said, "Well, we got carbon, we got this stuff in it." He said, "Well, show me the analysis." So I gave him the analysis, and Dave said, "Well, why the heck do you want to burn this stuff? You want to put this in the soil. This has got carbon in it. This will be great for helping the biome." And that's when we pivoted back in 2015, essentially, and began looking at a soil amendment. So that's kind of how we got into the business, Liz, if that's enough of a story.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we should show your animation now. And that gives the 30,000 foot view of the soil health saving benefits of PrairieFood.
That's a good idea. This animation is I think what Jessica describes as an explainer video. This is for those folks that know nothing about what's going on in the planet and the soil. So yeah, let's let her rip. It's only a couple of minutes.
Okay, can everybody, or Rob, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna hit play.
Healthy soil is a nexus of life for the planet. Underneath our feet, healthy soil teems with life that liberates nutrients for plants. Healthy plants respond to better soil function by feeding soil life, a partnership that increases soil organic matter. Healthy soil with increased soil organic matter supports the microbial ecosystem, helping to create healthy plants, clean water, nutritious food, and happy people. When Lewis and Clark explored the Louisiana Purchase for potential agriculture opportunities, the grasslands of the central United States had an average soil organic matter of 10 to 15%. Soil organic matter houses natural biology and a diversity of microbes, The farming practice of tillage damages soil and substantially reduces soil organic matter, which causes destruction of soil structure and loss of carbon from soil organic matter into the atmosphere. Damaged soil does not support healthy plants without a consistent supply of synthetic nutrients from chemical fertilizers. Damaged soil does not capture much rainfall, and soil often erodes away. As soil organic matter decreases, soil microbes die and carbon leaves the soil and moves to the atmosphere. The earth loses its strength. Carbon is Earth's energy source, and the circle of life requires carbon to exist in the right place at the right time, restoring the carbon in the soil that feeds the planet. The moment prairie food touches the soil, it feeds all soil microbes with a diversity of carbon molecules. The soil and plants repair their connection, creating carbon-rich soil organic matter and a healthier soil. In a healthy, functioning soil, armies of active microbes convert soil minerals into essential nutrients for healthy plants. The carbon-rich soil organic matter serves as a sponge for water, reducing erosion and increasing yields. With prairie food, farmers can rapidly increase soil organic matter, microbial activity, crop yields, and save water. It's time to renew the planet by restoring the health of soil that feeds all life. Healthy soil is
So that was the first time I'd seen that. That was great.
That was, yeah, it was really cool. We just got that finished. It took us quite a while. We were working with a group out of the Ukraine who had to move to Ireland in the middle of putting this together. It was quite an experience, and it was very rewarding to help people that are being oppressed. It was a learning experience.
So let's talk a little bit about, I want to go into carbon here in a second, but the water benefits of adding carbon to the soil. And it's mentioned in the video, but I'd like to get your explanation and how you understand that.
Well, carbon is a sponge, and it holds moisture. And one of the things that I think is so important about that video touched on was, Liz, was the fact that before we broke the sod open to farm, there was 10 to 15% SOM. Well, every percent of SOM holds about 30,000 gallons of water. So if you've got 10% there, you've got 12 inches of rainfall stored in the topsoil. And what that means is there's not a lot of runoff as well. That water that comes down in the form of moisture is held there. And that's one of the real benefits of increasing the health of the soil, is to capture that water, because during these drought times, just like we have now, those fields and those soils that have a better carbon content or a higher soil organic matter have a better tolerance to drought situations.
Yeah. So I know that you have been looking at a lot of carbon models that are out there for carbon capture, storage, possibly paying farmers for that. If you could wave a magic wand, what would a carbon program look like to you?
Oh man, and now you want me to go out on a limb, Liz. You're notorious for this, okay? That's really a good question, because our customers have been asking us for the last 3 years, essentially, since we started putting Prairie Food out, have been asking us, what is this carbon program and what should it look like? And should we be doing all these farming practices? And what if I don't want to do those? And I still have carbon, is that good or not? So we don't have any revenue built into our model from a carbon program, but we attempted for two years to work with the groups out there that are putting these carbon programs together, Vera and Gold Standard and Nori and Microsoft and all of these. And what we found was that, man, it's like the Wild West out there, and the numbers are all over the board. And there's a lot of people that don't understand what carbon sequestration really means. And so after working 2 years trying to help put together a program that we think would be viable for farmers, we decided that we'd look into a different methodology. And so if I had a magic wand, this is what I'd like to see for a carbon program. Number one, I'd like to get all the New York City financiers out of it, or at least a majority of them. They seem to be taking 30 to 40% of this potential revenue right off the top before we ever get back to the grower. And then we've got these organizations in the middle that are taking another bunch of percent. And by the time we get down to the person that's really doing the work, which is the grower landowner, there's not much money left because everybody's trying to make a quick buck in this gold rush. And to me, that's not the way to do a carbon program for the long term, to make the planet a better place for people, to make the planet healthier and more environmentally prudent, and to make the last P, which is a fair economic model for everybody involved. And so if I had my wand, how I would do it is, number one, is I'd put the grower landowner first. And what I would want to do is have a methodology that actually measured the exact amount of carbon in the soil. So if a farmer measured the amount of carbon in his soil, and then over a crop cycle, he did the practices or put down the products or whatever he was doing, measured the amount of carbon at the soil at the end of the crop cycle, and then if there was an increase that was encumbered in that process, that's what that farmer would get paid for. And an example of that would be 1% of SOM, soil organic matter, is the same as soil organic carbon. The numbers correlate directly. Okay. And what happens there is if 1% of SOM is 16.6 tons of CO2 equivalent, okay, per acre, and 16.6 tons of CO2 equivalent at $45 a ton is $767 an acre worth of carbon, according to the markets, the way they're presenting themselves now. Well, we don't see anything, relating to the real, what's going on and what the real math and measurements are. And so what I'd propose is let's do a carbon program that rewards the landowner and the farmer by paying them the majority of that. And that's a gross number, that's $767. And what I would like to see is a 10-10-80. 10% goes to the administering company that's putting the program together and bringing all the pieces together. 10% goes to those folks that are bringing the buyers to the program. And 80% of that gross goes back to the landowner grower. So in that case, for example, a $700, if 80% of the gross went back to the landowner, $560 an acre would be paid back to them. And I'm not sure over time how this carbon thing is going to wash out as we begin to figure out more readily how to sequester carbon in a way that is more permanent. One of the things that the farmer or landowner would have to agree to is not let that carbon go below that level over time. They would need to keep increasing that over time in order to earn new credits each year. And if I had my wand, I would say it need to be at least a 3-year program. You need to be tied to whatever additionality or practices you need to be working with for that period of time. And then that money needs to be paid to that farmer over that time based on the ability to maintain that level of carbon in the soil, which is only fair for both sides. So that would be my ideal of a fair program.
I want to touch on additionality really quick. So what about at some programs, you have to be, and this isn't just even carbon programs, there's lots of certifications out there as well,
right,
that require you to start from, I'm full conventional tillage, now I'm going no-till, and that is the additionality. What about regenerative farmers that have been doing this for a long time? I've seen personally that they're still increasing their soil organic matter
yes,
by their practices.
and that's
So I just wanted to get your thought on additionality in that respect.
well, my thoughts are twofold, and what's realistic are not exactly the same, Liz. My thoughts are those folks that have been doing this for a long period of time should be rewarded for it. That they can do it in a financial market where it requires verification is the biggest problem. I'd love to be able to go back in time with valid records and be able to say, look, this particular piece of ground farmed by this farmer has done X, and they should be rewarded for it. That's likely not going to happen. What's likely going to happen is going forward, as these farmers continue to increase their soil organic matter, and we've seen soil organic matter upwards of 30. So you can keep driving it deeper and deeper into the soil, that they get paid a fair price for the good hard work that they're doing, Liz.
Well, I really like that. I'm glad to see that people are taking a common sense approach to carbon markets, and your farmer first vision definitely aligns with ours at Soil Regen. But I want to kind of go back. Can you tell me more about what your product does and what PrairieFood does to sequester carbon?
That's a good question, and I would like to say that we knew that this would happen, and we went out and created a product to do that. It wasn't that case at all. We stumbled onto this by observing Mother Nature. Okay, much like what Gabe Brown and the others have done in regenerative, and the foundation group in there that have done such a great job so far that I've just been totally impressed with. And what really got me hooked on pursuing this path with my visions. PrairieFood is pure microcarbons. It's not a biologic. It's not a bug. There are approximately 55,000 different species of microbes in the soil that we know of, and then we're finding new ones every day. So this is a growing system. It's not one bug does nitrogen and one bug does zinc and one bug does X. It is a system where they all work together. And what we found is by feeding the microbes what they all want to eat, and what they want to eat is carbon. The problem is Mother Nature has done it in a kind of an infinity type of scale. So a carbon cycle in Mother Nature is 300 million years. And what that means is when a leaf falls off a tree, okay, and gets on the ground, a microbe, like a mole's a microbe because it's eating the carbon and pooping it out. And then a worm picks that up, eats that and poops it out. And then it goes down this cascade of 55,000 different species until eventually the plant requests something and the microbes deliver it to the plant. Well, that cycle takes a long time. And then in that carbon cycle, what ends up happening is that soil gets pushed under the tectonic plates and compressed, and it gets turned into gas and oil and coal and other things over time. And then we punch a hole in the ground and pull it out and reuse that carbon molecule. or it comes back eventually in that cycle back to the landscape and gets sucked into the ground where it's recycled, and that leaf on that tree is old now with the same, it is the same identical carbon molecule it started with. They're not new ones and they're not old ones. There's a fixed number that we have on this planet. And a leaf is approximately, if you look at it, 11 cycles old, or it's gone through 300 million years worth of evolution 11 times. And it's been in that molecule's been a leaf 11 times, but it's been part of that 300 million year cycle through all of Mother Nature. What we do at PrairieFood is help Mother Nature. And how we do that is we intercept that waste biomass after it's been used in a farming application. It could be stubble, it can be corn, it could be manure from a feedlot, it can be a distiller's wet grain after they pull the ethanol out of it. It could be human waste, it could be, sawdust, it doesn't matter. What we do is we do the same thing Mother Nature does in 300 million years, but we do it in 1 second. And that is the process that we've developed over our years of looking at this and patented. And we create essentially PrairieFood from distillers wet grain and from cattle manure, mixing it together 50-50, running it through our process. And when it goes through our reactor, in order to convert that back into organically bound carbon, it's not decomposed, it's not composted manure. It is totally deconstructed to the molecular level and then rebound to the nitrogen molecule, the carbon is, and the phosphate in there is remineralized to a P2O4, which is a phosphate that won't run off in water and will be easily uptaken by the biome. And the carbon, once it's bound to the nitrogen, doesn't volatilize in the sunlight anymore, so it stays in the soil. There's no greenhouse gases or no runoff, essentially, from PrairieFood, which is environmentally prudent for the planet. And that's what we want to do, is keep the nutrients in the soil where the biome can utilize them and where they can feed it to the crop that's asking for the nutrients it needs to make the healthiest plant possible.
We had a question from the audience, and how would PrairieFood compare with other humic products?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, there's 2 things that come to mind for me. Humic products are made from peat, it's a fossil fuel product. So it's actually made from a pre-coal, and the humic acid is extracted with sulfuric acid essentially from it. And the cool thing about humic is it's carbon. It is carbon, but it's a medium chain carbon. And what that means is that it has 1 molecule size. So the cool thing about PrairieFood is it's multiple molecule sizes at the same time. So in that cycle of carbon, where the mole eats it and it goes in a watershed going down through those 55,000 species, with the humic acid, you feed a certain group of species of biome. You don't feed the rest until that's been eaten by that biome species and then put back into nature's cycle. With PrairieFood, we shred those carbon molecules, anything from a 3-chain carbon to 500,000 chain carbon and everything in between. So the difference is when PrairieFood hits the soil, it feeds all 55,000 species instantly or immediately. They all have access to that food. And there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dormant microbes in the soil. And the reason they're dormant is because there's not enough food there for them to reproduce. And when you hit it with PrairieFood, assuming you have light and water and those good things necessary for life, what happens is you get this immediate growth of the microbiome and microbial activity. And this growth is exponential. I mean, it's huge. It's crazy what happens. You can see it within minutes of the prairie food hitting the ground when you're doing for example, a Haney soil test, where you put a CO2 dome on the soil to measure the soil's respiration. How much CO2 are these little microbes exhaling? Well, as they begin to multiply and grow, they begin to exhale more and more CO2, and you can actually see the meter begin to move on the CO2. So you get this instant growth in the microbiome. And what that does for a farmer and what that does for a healthy soil is now it puts this army at full strength. And this army is ready to deliver to that plant whatever it is asking for. And one of the cool things we've learned recently is plants are pretty damn smart. When they need zinc, they secrete sugars into the soil that stimulate the species that gather zinc. And when enough zinc is put to the plant and it's satisfied its leaves and don't have white stripes on them anymore, okay, it turns off those sugars or exudates going through the roots. And that species says, okay, I can stop bringing zinc to this plant. And then the plant goes, oh, but I'm a little deficient in nitrogen. It turns on the sugars and pushes those sugars out. It stimulates that group of trichoderma or whatever it might be that brings that nitrogen back and brings that nitrogen. When it's satisfied, it turns off those sugars. So the cool part of this is now we've got a full army down there waiting to do whatever that plant asks for. And by doing that, what we see in our data and what we've seen in the crops that we didn't expect is all of a sudden the biomass above ground in the plants that have prairie food is double or triple or more than the biomass with fossil fuel type fertilizers. And the biomass below the ground is the same. It's double or triple or more in mass. And what that means is all of a sudden we've made the efficiencies of the plant in the ground to do photosynthesis a huge increase in processing power. And now it can suck more carbon out of the atmosphere and flush it into the soil at night when it flushes that carbon into the soil. And it ends up being excess carbon, which is great because that raises the SOM. Because what is SOM? It's carbon. So what we do is kickstart Mother Nature essentially into that really quick cycling of those events in order to make her as efficient as possible and grow the best plants as possible.
So you and I have talked before, and you're mentioning it in the soil as well, like a circular, keeping the carbon in the loop. And then looking at your background picture with the sources of current synthetic fertilizers and nutrients, can you talk about that background picture and then what your vision is for a more closed circular system?
Economy, yes. I didn't do very well on economics at college, but I learned a lot about it in business. So this map behind my head was put out by the Fertilizer Association. This is the nutrient trade flow map for NPK, sulfur, and zinc. And 54% of all the nutrients we use in the United States come from outside the country. Okay. That was news to me. I thought we produced everything we used internally. That is not the case. And the reason is this is the linearization of that 300 million year process. It's where those nutrients ended up in the cycle with tectonic plates moving around, and that's where the high concentrations are. With the population we're supporting, we have to grow so much more crop ground and more food that we have to begin importing these nutrients. So if you're a corn farmer in Kansas, 54% of your money is going overseas. And to me, that's a travesty. Well, with Prairie Food, you erase every single one of those lines. You don't need any of that. And what we do is try to draw a 50-mile radius around that particular field and do all the economy within that. We gather the waste biomass, we convert it to prairie food, we put it back on the crop ground. The crops are sold or fed to the cattle. They're reused in that cycle, and all the money flows back to rural America. And we've been very fortunate. On my board of advisors is a gentleman named Dr. Tom Honig. And Tom Honig was the Fed chairman for Region 10 for 12 years. And on the Fed board under Greenspan, he was the only one that voted against cheap interest rates and easy money, which is coming back to haunt us now, which we see. And the big question is, how can you move the US dollars back to the US and take some of that money out of circulation so we can reduce inflation and we can bring economic viability back to rural America? And that's what our plant and process do. We're a distributive plant. We're not a $200 million plant. We're under $20 million plant. And what we do is locate our plants close to where the source of the biomass is, so we can eliminate a lot of those transportation lines that you see across there. And we cover all of those nutrients that we said, including nitrogen. Once you have the soil health up high enough, up to 7 or above, essentially SOM, you're not going to need any synthetic N. And you surely don't need PK, sulfur, zinc, lime, or any of that. That is all provided within the soil from the biome. And there's billions of years of that available in the soil. It's just that there isn't an army that converts it and gives it to the plant until you increase that biome to its maximum capacity size. And that's what we're doing. And I've been asked to speak in November at the National or the American Bankers Association Ag Conference nationally in Omaha. There'll be about 2,500 to 3,000 ag bankers. And the reason I've been asked to talk is to talk about moving this cash flow back to rural America, and how can the banking and how can rural America be a catalyst to help affect that? How can PrairieFood help? How can other regenerative practices help do this? And that's excited me very much. I'm more of a visionary guy than an execution guy, but the cool thing is I put together this great team that knows how to execute, and that's what we're in the process of doing.
So we were with you in Pratt about a year ago or last fall with your ribbon cutting. So can you give us an update? And you were speaking of your vision on the company since last fall, and then what your vision is for 1 year out and even 5 years out.
Wow, I wish I had a magic wand and could make that all happen and know that, but I'll give you what I think I'd like to see happen. And thank you for bringing up the conference. That was our coming out party, so to speak, in November of last year in Pratt. The people of Pratt didn't even know we were there. We'd been there 3 years. And what we were doing in Pratt was refining our process, building our reactors, testing the different types of inputs on the biomass, putting our product down in the fields in Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska, doing those things that you need to do in advance of coming to market. I mean, the worst thing you can do is go promise somebody something and go out and deliver something that doesn't work, and you're not going to be in business very long. I've been around long enough to know that. I kind of practice the Missouri standard. I go to a farmer, and what we're trying to do is one farmer, one field, one tanker load at a time. And if you like it and it does good things for you, buy it again. And what we're finding is over 90% of our farmers that try or participate with the PrairieFood trials are buying again. And now it's their 3rd year into buying product, and they're covering more and more acreage each year. So the coming out party was to let people know that we were moving from a pilot site to a commercial site. This is our first commercial year in business where we're actually delivering product in quantity. And we have a long ways to go to ramp that up, obviously. but we're delivering tens of thousands of acres already this year. So we're a little ahead of our schedule. We want to be able to deliver hundreds of thousands of acres shortly. Each one of our little plants, and we have 2 reactors. I'll go a little technical here. In this chemical process is called hydrothermal processing. It's been known for a long time, 40 years. It's nothing new. Okay, but the way we do it is different. And what they do in Europe is they have a big reactor or a vessel. It's a big pot that's 15 feet in diameter, 30 feet tall. It's made of stainless steel. They put water and biomass into this tank, and in a batch mode, they cook the hell out of it under high temperature and high pressure. And anywhere in 2.5 hours to 24.5 hours, they get the chemical conversion to happen where it binds the carbon to the nitrogen molecule and solidifies the phosphates, okay? Our reactor is 8 inches in diameter and 33 inches long. It's not a batch process, it's continuous flow. And everybody said that can't be done, so we did it. It took us several years to do it. And we learned the hard way. It's not easy to do. We found that out. And we applied our IP and patents around it, hoping to hold our IP for a while until we gain a decent market share. And that gives us the ability to grow fairly rapidly, because Mother Nature can scale much better than any human technology. And we're not a silver bullet. All we are is a catalyst to provide carbon to the biome, so the carbon and Mother Nature can work at top efficiency. That is what we do. So in that vein, each one of our plants can cover about 130,000 acres with our David reactor. And we also have a reactor called Goliath. Goliath was way too big. David is better sized. David slew Goliath is how we came up with those reactors. And that reactor takes up about 9 square feet in this whole process. Our biggest challenge is storage of product as we begin to deliver it in quantities. And that is an easy problem to deal with. It just takes a lot of money to do it. So we've been in the process of raising additional capital and expanding our plant in Pratt. We're expanding it to 2 full plant sizes. So it'll be able to handle 300,000 acres out of Pratt. And to give you a scale example, in a 50-mile radius, which is the same model that liquid fertilizer companies use for the delivery of their products, in a 50-mile radius of the Pratt plant, there's 5.2 million acres of ground. And in that 5.2 million acres, there's 3 million acres is ag related. And of that, 2.5 million is direct row crops that we address. So that's our TAM, a total addressable market, essentially in that 50-mile radius. And you can see with the plant that covers 150,000 acres, we will have multiple plants within that 50-mile radius. And each of those plant sites will be closer and closer to the field, so we can keep the economics down and process the waste biomass that comes off the farms in the form of residue, manures, or whatever it might be, and then reuse that instead of letting it flow up into the atmosphere in the form of greenhouse gases, or to run off into the water and pollute our waters with algae blooms, or pollute the ocean with dead spots. And that's our model. We are hoping to build 3 plants this year, at least start those 3. We're building the second one in Pratt right now. We've got 2 more locations in Kansas. We have requests for locations over 31 different sites in the Midwest that look like they're qualified sites. So our goals and aspiration are to grow quickly and be able to provide this product to farmers and growers if they want to participate in that model and receive those benefits of better water storage, better soil health, better crop health. Typically, our protein content and other things in the crops is 30% more nutrient dense than from fossil fuel type of products grown. So it's better for the people of the planet. It's better for the environment. And we think the model we're putting together is very competitive. We're $94 an acre. Our competitors are a lot more than that. And we think we add a lot of value from the regenerative practices.
Yeah. So Rob, you mentioned the local community in a circular economy in a 50-mile radius. So speaking more to that, are you using venture capital to fund PrairieFood?
Oh, now you're getting into some soft spots here. Yeah, this is where it's frustrating as a startup company and dealing with New York money and the big money guys. They have they want to run your company and they don't want to pay the grower and they want to take all the money off the top. So we have no institutional investors at this time. We've raised a little over 10 million ourselves from friends and family. And that's what we've been doing. We're in the process of seeking a strategic partner that has the same mission and goal that we have. And our mission is to make the world a better place for the people, for the planet, and make it economically viable for everybody in the channel. Make it fair. Stop, ripping money from the folks that are doing all the work. And what I found is they talk a good game, the big money guys, but when push comes to shove, they want to run the business and they want to take that profit for themselves. And me being as stubborn and as old as I am, I've just told them no so far. We've had numerous offers to buy our company. We've turned them down. It's mainly from big ag and big fossil fuel. What we want to do is work more independently with the growers in the community and raise money locally so that money circulates there. And those people that participate in it can also benefit from what we're able to put together. And one of the things, Liz, that I'm very proud of our team is our starting pay for someone pushing a broom in rural America is $25 an hour. And what I want to be able to do is bring that economy back so that a kid that wants to farm but is being pressured because of the economy can get a job in the ag space that's local, that he'll get good pay and good benefits so he can do both farm and help promote regenerative and at the same time make a decent living that he deserves for the hard work or he or she deserve for the hard work that they're doing. So maybe I'm a little, I don't know,
Idealistic?
Yeah, I'm unrealistic, but you know what?
No, idealistic. I like it.
Oh, idealistic. Yeah, I am a little idealistic. But why not?
We are the same way. I have had people ask me how we, raise money for other companies, and we don't take venture capital either. We're all farmer owned, farmer first, and it sounds like you're headed that direction.
Yes, we are headed that direction unless we can get some people that have the same vision and will adhere to it and bring that capital necessary to grow this quicker so that we can all make a bigger and better impact on the people and the planet. And if that develops, I'm not afraid to take it, but only if we can drive our boat and be sure that they're a minority player. They're not running the business, and that's my challenge as I'm working with these folks.
So we have about 10 more minutes left, and there were some technical questions which have kind of been answered in the chat, but I wanted to make sure that we brought them up.
Okay.
So what is the rate and method of application, and is it a liquid application? That covers a couple of questions that were in there.
Well, those are good questions. It is a liquid product. It's a slurry. It has multiple sizes of carbon in it. So it's not like kerosene, which you put through your $400,000 sprayer and spray on the ground, and you're spraying poison. It is organic based. So it's the application method has to be applicable. Most of our farmers spray. They go out and get their old piece of spray equipment and put big nozzles on it. And that takes care of the big particle size typically. It does need to be resuspended because those particles will settle to the bottom, but it's easily resuspended by shooting some air through it or pumping the fluid around inside a tank. So we have people doing fertigation through the sprinklers. We also have people spraying, and we have people broadcasting in a more traditional manure style of broadcaster as well. But it's pretty easily applied. We recommend to get the Army at full strength. Now remember, we're not feeding the plant, we're feeding the Army in the ground. So it doesn't matter which crop it is, okay? It matters how strong do you want that Army and how much work do they have to do. And we recommend 40 gallon per acre per year, okay? And this has come from our data that we've collected over the last three years and more on what rate works the best to get the most microbial activity going in the soil and bring that soil health up quickly. So 40 gallon acre per year. Some of our farmers are putting 20 gallons down in the spring before planting because it acts as an accelerator. We get a lot of emergence quickly from the seed by having PrairieFood in the soil. And then the cool thing about it is PrairieFood's seed to N ratio, which is carbon to nitrogen ratio, is below 10 to 1. So it can even be as low as 8 to 1. And what that means is it will take residue on top of the ground after harvest and help move all those nutrients and carbon right back into the soil. And so we have folks doing both methods.
Have you done any in-furrow application?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, we have, and it's been very successful. So at planting an in-furrow application at 20 or 40 gallon per acre rate, 40 is a little heavy for some of the strip till stuff, but yeah, we have done that, and it works quite well. The cool thing about the biome, as you know, Liz, is that it's all interconnected through the cilia and philia and all the everything that connects it together. It's all one unit, so there is movement of materials and health across that whole mechanism, even if you put it in furrow or put it down every 12 inches or every 30 inches, whatever it might be. We see a more consistent SOM increase when it's sprayed consistently across the top of the soil.
In the chat, Trish mentioned your green glove service.
Oh,
so I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit for us.
Well, yes, and Liz, this comes a lot to you and to the team and Jimmy and Emmons and Russell and the folks that have really been the foundation for this regenerative ag movement. The key is education, because unfortunately, our farmers have been taught by big ag to do it one way, and the way they do it is they have to buy all these things every year and put it on their ground, and they can't figure out why they're having poor soil health, and why their yields are having trouble keeping up. Well, the reason is because they've taken the carbon out of the soil. And so the real challenge here is education. So the green glove service that we offer is an educational piece of our service. With that $94 an acre, we include two Haney soil tests, one at the beginning and one at the end of the season. And also we include visits to the site by our carbon agronomists. And we also do planning and helping plan crops and setting out a plan for you to do more regenerative farming if that's where the farmer wants to go. And that to me is a key part of this. Eventually, once we give enough momentum in this space, we won't need to do as much of that. But right now, it's very, very important, and that's why we partnered with folks like Liz and Soil Regen, and is that we want to help participate in helping educate the market segment so that they can make better decisions and have more profits for themselves to hold on to.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to ask a kind of a strange question here, but do you ever see a day where a grower would not need to apply Prairie Food anymore?
I do. I can see that. You know, if we get the health of this, look at Jimmy's soil. Jimmy Emmons has got, 11% SOM. Now he's using some Prairie Food and continues to get good results and continues to increase his SOM, but he doesn't have to use Prairie Food. I mean, he doesn't have to buy any inputs hardly at all in order to do that. And that's where we'd like to see the farmer get to. But if there really is a carbon market and there really is the ability to get a revenue stream from making the world a better place and moving the carbon from the atmosphere back into the soil, then we see Prairie Food as an integral part of that process. So if you want to continue to increase your SOM and not kind of keep it level, then you can add Prairie Food along the way, but only do it if it's economically viable for what you want to do. Otherwise, once you get to a certain level, Mother Nature is cycling perfectly, and you don't need all these other inputs that people are trying to lay on you, like us. Okay.
Thanks, Rob. That's a good answer. I like that. We did have a question from Drew. Do you have the NPK and carbon analysis on the Prairie Food?
Well, Prairie Food is primarily carbon. It doesn't have a lot of NPK in it. It's got some, but it doesn't have a lot in it. Where we're gathering those nutrients is from the soil. The microbes are bringing those nutrients, the PK, sulfur, zinc, whatever it is, are already in the soil. They're minerals. And once you have the biome in place and the Army working full strength, they just mine it and bring it up, bring it to the plant. On the inside of it, 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. I mean, come on, let's be realistic here. If you have the right fungus and the right things growing in the biome, you're going to be sucking a lot of N out of the atmosphere and putting it into the soil. And so that's why once you get the biome and the soil organic matter up, above that 7 level, you don't need any of that other stuff. So what we recommend early, and typically, 15% SOM, there's not a lot of that out there. There's a few, but not a lot. The average SOM in the state of Kansas is 1.5. I mean, we're totally deficient in carbon. And what we want to do is increase the amount of carbon in the soil. Well, you can't take a soil addicted to N, totally withdraw from it. It's going to puke. It's just not going to be able to handle it. So what we recommend is you cut your N input by 50%. Typically, and that's part of Green Glove service, because we'll measure it and see how much you can cut it, in order to produce a good yield crop. And but you don't need PK, sulfur, and zinc anymore. The microbes will do that for you if you put Prairie Food down and get the Army working for you. You don't need to go buy that stuff. So I think to answer that question, Prairie Food doesn't have a lot of NPK, sulfur, and zinc. It has some. But what it really has is the carbon to stimulate the biome to bring those things to the plant through Mother Nature's cycle, not human cycle.
Thanks, Rob. This was a great discussion, and we're at time now. Jessica put some links for frequently asked questions there in the chat, and she put the website on here, I believe. Best practices with the product. There's also a link to the Prairie Food animation in the chat if anybody's interested in looking at that. But Rob, I really appreciate you being on here, and I appreciate y'all's continued support at our educational events, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you. One last closing statement here, Liz, is I want everybody to know how much we appreciate the regenerative path. Our data shows that those farmers that use more regenerative practices have a quicker increase in SOM. And we're getting up to 2.5% increase in SOM in one crop cycle, which is unheard of. And that was shocking to us. But without this movement of people that are interested in taking care of the people, the planet, and having a fair profit, we wouldn't exist. And without the work of what the regenerative movement has done to date, I wouldn't be here to try to help us all be successful. And I want to thank you all for what you do, and we will continue to support everybody the best we can. Okay.
Thanks, Rob. And thanks everybody for being on here. Stay tuned. We have more webinars coming up soon. So you can check that out on our website, or I'm sure I'll send you an email. But thanks again, and appreciate everybody being on here, and appreciate Prairie Food.